And thank you so much for joining us today. We have a very, very special guest on the show today, Susan Ariel Rainbow Kennedy, also known as SARK. She's the author of something like 16 books, best known for her book, probably for Succulent Wild Woman, but she's also come out with a new book today. So thanks so much for being with us, and welcome to the show, Susan Ariel Rainbow Kennedy. Hello.
Oh, thank you so much.
Hi.
And I just saw Wayne in Arizona, and he is just full of love.
Oh, wonderful.
So I just want to put that message in.
I love him. I saw him last time he was in Vancouver, and he's actually, it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm so excited to see him again, and I met him last time, so that was really nice.
Oh, good.
Yeah, did you have a chance to hang out with him?
Yeah, I did. We were both presenters, so I was at an author dinner.
Awesome.
So I got to have dinner with him, yes, and I love Vancouver, so I just want to say that too.
Yes, Vancouver loves you too, and you were here just a couple of months ago, I guess, in the late summer for Leslie Lewis Sword's event. Oh, you had your own event as well.
Yeah, we were mutually promoting each other's wonderful events. Leslie's Miracle in Rwanda, which I recommend to everyone, and then Hollyhock, which I also recommend to everyone, and I'll be back there next fall in October.
Oh, awesome. Yay. Well, and today I want to talk to you about your new book, because you have a brand new book that just came out, Glad No Matter What, Transforming Loss and Change into Gift and Opportunity.
Yes. And let's be sure that we start by saying what this book is not. This book is not about feeling glad when you don't. How annoying.
Definitely, and that's the intro to your book, and I love that, because so many people we hear about since The Secret came out, I think that people are now really watching their thoughts, which is wonderful, but they're also kind of, instead of moving through a feeling and finding something beneficial about an experience that they're in, rather than doing that, they tend to ignore the feeling and push it down and repress it and just pretend that they're happy when they're not, and that's not healthy for anybody.
No, and I did that for years, so I can tell you unequivocally it does not work. But here's the challenging part. It does appear to work in the short term, and we know that. So we anesthetize ourselves, we avoid, we deny, we repress, but it has a cumulative effect, and those feelings will get louder and larger. And it becomes very difficult then to do that deep feeling work. So it really is, it's a much better way to do it along the way. And the message that I want to say to everyone is you don't need to spend a ton of time doing this. If you feel a feeling, if you feel what you feel, if you really do, if you turn towards a challenging feeling for even 5 seconds, it can shift and change shape. And that 5 seconds is what we're most afraid of, because let's say we're feeling rage. We're so afraid to turn towards it because we're afraid it will grow and become even more enraged, and, we'll never stop being enraged.
Yeah, I've been there.
And the truth is, no feeling lasts forever, and everything is always shifting and changing. So the more proficient you can become with your own feelings, just so much wisdom and gladness will really be available to you. Because as you block and repress difficult feelings, you're also blocking and repressing the glad and great ones.
Oh, that's interesting. So even though you're pretending to feel glad, you're not really.
No.
Because you're faking it. But then but some people say fake it till you make it.
Well, I don't think fake it till you make it goes with feelings.
All right.
I think it goes with, I don't know. I don't like that.
Yeah.
It annoys me.
Well, Susan, I want to talk a lot about your book, Glad No Matter What. Everyone should get it and read it. But I also want to get a little bit of background, because when you were here in Vancouver, if I'm remembering correctly at your intro for Miracle in Rwanda, you were talking about how you had a really difficult childhood.
Yes, I did, as so many people did and do. I had a wonderful childhood in many ways. I grew up in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I had some wonderful parents who were quite loving. And then I had a big brother who was 4 years older, who had been my best friend, and then seemingly overnight turned into a monster who began abusing me sexually and physically. And it wasn't until years later that we found out that he'd been abused by the next-door neighbor.
Oh.
So it's so sad, and, my family was, pretty devastated by this, and it really altered the shape of things. But I will also say there were gifts in it, and I don't recommend this route to find the gifts, but I'm here to tell you that I did experience and find gifts, and one of them was I basically moved into my imagination and lived there, so I could create a world other than the one I was living in. And so all of these books and all of these things you see were really being born in that time.
So, Susan, that's what because I don't want to focus on the sadness, and I can imagine that there was an incredible amount of challenge and sadness, but I wanted to talk about that because so many times people see someone who is successful and an author and a speaker, and they think, oh, well, they've had it easy, so of course they're glad. So that's why I know. And listen,
even though there was sadness, I'm so happy to speak of it because I don't have any shame or secrecy in my life. And what I've seen that do, I've written about this in my books, and I speak about it when I teach and travel, is that it sets everyone else free, too. And it set my mother free in a profound way because she had significant abuse history that she hadn't told anyone about for 50 years, including my father.
Wow.
So it changed the course of our family forever. That kind of abuse trail has stopped. And I'm so glad for that. And I'm so glad to speak out for people who may be just realizing they've been abused or people who are in the process of healing. And I really, in many ways, have moved on. And I write about that in the book, telling and living new stories. Because there's a time to keep going over and over what happened, and then there's a time to not.
And so, Susan, you mentioned going into your imagination, and I'm wondering what else you were able to do to get to the place where you are today. Did you have therapy, or did you find, what was your path to healing exactly?
Yeah, well, it was the 1960s in Minnesota, and my dad was a traveling salesman, so not much money. And my mom, though, got our whole family into therapy, which was absolutely not done. I mean, nobody was going to therapy. And, the issue that they presented with was our kids are fighting because that's what would happen. He would beat me up. And so, unfortunately, my mother chose a therapist. Nobody had ever been to therapy. And I was 7 years old when we started, and the therapist let me sit on his lap.
Oh,
and then told me to wait outside while he talked to my parents. And I heard through the door, I heard him saying, "You have a very seductive little girl, and any problems in the family are probably due to her."
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, and, who knows what he really said? Who knows but that's what I heard. And I went on holding that in my soul through my life until my mid-30s when I attempted suicide. I was having incest flashbacks, and I couldn't sleep or eat, and I luckily did not succeed in that attempt, and I called a suicide prevention line, and the woman said, "Did you really want to die, or did you just want the pain to end?" And I said, "Oh, I just wanted the pain to end." So she encouraged me to get therapy, and that started about 15 years of therapy that was good therapy, which pretty incredible that I was able to go back after that other experience.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm so glad that you reached out for help and called that line. I actually volunteer doing the same thing, so I'm glad to hear a success story from it.
Yes, and I think we need more success stories too. And then you asked what else I did. The other thing I did when I was 10 years old was make best friends with a man in the neighborhood who was 80 years old, and he really became my best friend, and he just loved me. He was a real mentor to me. And to give you an example, he bought me a microscope and a telescope because he wanted to teach me to look close and to look far.
Aww.
And then he got really sick, and he went in the hospital, and my mom said, his name was Mr. Boggs, and she said, he's probably not going to come back out. He's very sick, and he's 80 years old. And I said, well, then I need to create something for him every day he's in there. And I did that. And he did get out. And he said, I really think you saved my life. He said, no one else called or wrote while I was in there. He said, and I had to get out to see you.
Aww.
And I promptly ran in the house and said, Mom, I'm supposed to be a beacon of hope and write books for the world. And she said, eat your peanut butter sandwich.
How old were you when that happened?
10 years old, and I wrote my first book that summer of my 10th year.
Wow. That's amazing. Oh, I'm just so excited to have you on the show. Thank you so much, Susan, for being here and for being that beacon of hope for so many people out there. And now let's talk about Glad No Matter What, because as you said before, it's not about pushing your feelings down. It's not about pretending you're glad when you are. It's about transforming those negative experiences and seeing the gifts that they provide. Can you give us a little bit more detail about what that means to you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And also it's about finding and feeling, well, number one, it's about feeling what you feel. So a lot of people don't know how they feel. So it's one of the reasons I put a feelings menu in the book. So you can pick a feeling that you're feeling, and then it will direct you to a place in the book that will provide practical things to do. And that's what I call practical gladness. Because if we're experiencing all of our feelings, and another point is most people were not taught how to hold or have multiple feelings at the same time. So, for instance, in my family, growing up, you were allowed to have basically one feeling at a time, but you had to go to your room to have it. And you had to come out feeling better. And it wasn't until years later that I learned what it means to hold and have multiple feelings. So let's give an example of that. Someone might be, feeling glad to see their mother at the holidays, but feeling sad because their mother is in some physical decline. And I just was working with a woman who has this situation. And then feeling worried about how she's going to help her mother during this decline, this physical decline and illness. And then feeling angry at her sister because she's not doing more for their mom. And then feeling worried about what this will do to the family, and just a general feeling of sadness. So this whole collection of feelings really can be honored and held in its multiple feeling way. And what a lot of people do is try to just pick one feeling and then cling to it, and then they don't allow the other feelings in. So it can become very extreme. Like, I feel sad. And there are definitely times to feel just sad. But there are other times to feel a mixture. I feel sad, I feel angry, I feel wistful, I feel I feel a poignancy. So I really wanted to, what I'm calling practical gladness, if you practice that in the transformation of feelings, you will be able to live in what I call the marvelous, messy middle. Because that's where all the stuff happens. It's not in the extremes of, we don't feel huge extreme things as often as we feel a mixture of many feelings.
Definitely. Well, and that's such an important point, and I want to talk more about the feelings and your book, Glad No Matter What. It is already time for a break, so we will be back with more Synchronicity in a moment. We are speaking with Susan Ariel Rainbow Kennedy, also known as SARK, author of 16 books, including her very latest, Glad No Matter What, Transforming Loss and Change into Gift and Opportunity. We'll be back with more SARK in a moment. Welcome back to Synchronicity, talk radio for your mind, body, and soul here on CITR 101.9 FM in Vancouver. I am your host, Marie Benard. Thank you so much for being with us. And again, remember to tune in, stay tuned till the end of the show, because I have another pair of tickets to see Wayne Dyer here in beautiful Vancouver at the Queen Elizabeth Theatre on November 23rd. That is a Tuesday evening, so stay tuned if you want free tickets, or you can also pick them up at Ticketmaster. So today we're speaking with Susan Ariel Rainbow Kennedy, SARK. I am so thrilled to have her on the show. She's the author of books like Succulent Wild Woman, and now her latest book that just came out, Glad No Matter What, Transforming Loss and Change into Gift and Opportunity. Welcome back to the show, SARK.
Thanks so much, Marie.
Hi. Do you prefer SARK or Susan? Does it matter?
I'm definitely representing the entity that's known as SARK, and I think that's the one that people are most familiar with, so happy to be called SARK.
Wonderful. So I just played that HIV/AIDS campaign, and it really made me think of your book, Glad No Matter What, because it's about finding the opportunities in those incredible challenges and finding new ways and new perspectives to look at things. So can you take us through a bit of the process? So someone would read the book and they would look at the feelings menu and see how they're feeling, and then they go in and they do an exercise. So can you give us an example of one of the exercises they might do?
Sure. There's a process I show in the book that I invented some years ago. And by the way, everything I write about are all things that I use and utilize myself. So I'm like a human experiment. So I just want to make that clear. And so this particular process is called three-part harmony. So it's really a way. It also could be called Mad, Wise, Glad pages. But it's a way to write down how you feel and honor and respect that. So there's a part one where you write down how you feel. This is all, of course, described in detail in the book. And then part two is where you you use your awakened wise self. And some people could call it your higher self. And your wise self reframes all the things that you just wrote that you're upset about. So it's a way of retraining the brain to witness your feelings and emotions and give you something to do with them, especially people who aren't, a lot of people just aren't familiar with doing anything with their feelings. They just sort of have them, but they don't know what they are, and it's kind of like this underground thing. And this brings it out to the light, and it brings it up for healing, and it can happen very quickly in this process. Oh, and then that clears the way for part three, which are the glad pages. So it reminds you of what you are glad about. And there's lots of different ways this process can be used. I sometimes just use part one just to get some angry or upset or worried thoughts out, not just thoughts but feelings. But let me give an example of the wise self, because I want everyone to know how powerful that part is inside of everyone. And it's inside of everyone, by the way. So everyone has a wise self, a higher self, and the abilities that this has to, when you do some writing like this with a process like three-part harmony, like I said, it retrains your brain, and what it does actually is give your wise self a chance to be with you all the time, not just when you're writing. So your wise self will start to speak up in your life in actual incidents that are occurring. So a fresh example from my life is that I was recently informed in the United States with the IRS that I was being audited. And,
that's scary.
Yeah. It's scary, and it's something I had dreaded, ever since I paid taxes. And so I utilized my wise self to guide me in how to best prepare for this audit. And I'll just jump to the end and tell you that because of this, I experienced a magical IRS audit.
And
that
sounds rare.
Yes, and I'm so happy because I really have transformed that energy now, and I'm able to help others. I've been consulting with other people who've been audited and are feeling very scared and very off balance and worried and all those kinds of feelings. And so I've started just kind of informally, but I'm probably going to do something in writing so that other people can, here's what to do if you're audited from a metaphysical and spiritual perspective. So That was one, and then the other one is perhaps more pointed, is the incident where I was being picked up to come to British Columbia, to come to Vancouver, and the car and driver was late. And I didn't realize it till the last minute, so I got very nervous because I only had a certain amount of time to get to the airport. And then I remembered I hadn't taken out the garbage, so I ran down the service corridor to empty the garbage, and I slipped and fell. And I slipped and fell in what turned out to be cat poop.
Nice.
Yeah. So now I had cat poop on my clothes, and I had to go change. And then the driver was just pulling up, and he got out of his car, and he said, "Yeah, ride to the airport." And I said, "Do you realize you're late?" I was really upset, and he said, "No, I'm not. No, I'm not. Just a few minutes." And I said, "No, you really are." I said, "And now you're defensive about it." So we're basically standing, kind of having this fight on the street. And then he said, "Well, just get in the car." And I said, "No, I won't get in the car." I said, "I don't like you." I was kind of surprised that popped out. But it did. And finally I realized, well, how am I going to get to the airport? I need to get there. So eventually I got in the car. And, it's a little embarrassing to admit, but I was intensely disliking him. And I was looking at the back of his head and thinking, he is wrong and he was late. And, and I know he was doing the same thing. And then my awakened wise self spoke to me and said, "Ask him if he wants to start over." So I said, "Could we start over?" I said, "What's your name?" He said, "My name is Bill." And I said, "Bill, I would like to acknowledge that I was very crabby when you arrived, and I had just slipped and fallen in cat poop." And he said, "Well, I would like to acknowledge that I was sitting at the wrong house 10 minutes early because the dispatcher had not given me your correct address."
Aww.
And I said, "Oh, Bill," I said, "do you want to forgive each other?" And he said, "Yes, I do." And I said, "Me too." By the time we got to the airport, we were crying, we were hugging, and I have Bill's home phone number.
Aw, you do? That's nice.
But it was such a great example of wise self in motion in an actual incident in life. And that's what I want this book to do, to be that kind of support system for people to take all the things that happen to us and alchemize them and transform them and have new responses instead of just being in reaction. A lot of people just have things happen and then they just react. And it's often not from a very constructive or productive place.
Definitely. Well, and I'm curious, do you recommend always solving it with the person? Because sometimes we're faced with someone who is irrational. And
well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I just had one just the other day with an irrational person. So I have a fresh example. I was being picked up after taking we have something here called BART. It's a rapid transit. I had taken it from the airport and then got into a cab and told him where I lived, and he started shouting, "That's not far enough. That's not worth my time." And he was crazy. And I just said very calmly, "Well, it sounds like you'd rather not drive me." It seemed like a good observation to make. And he slammed on the brakes so hard that I hit my head.
Oh my goodness.
Then started screaming, "Get out! Get out!" And then he got out and hurled my luggage onto the ground.
Wow.
And I watched my luggage just sitting there in the middle of the road, and but here again, the wise self was with me, and I was absolutely undisturbed. I said to him, "Wow, you're a very angry person." I said, "I'm so sorry." I just felt so bad for him. I didn't take it personally. I wasn't afraid of him. My wise self was just right there, kind of smiling, holding my hand.
That's amazing, because last week, when I come here to the radio station on Friday mornings, I drive part way usually, and then I take the bus the rest of the way. And I found this place to park where there's usually plenty of parking on the street. There's no permit park, anyone can park there. And so I've been parking on this one block for the last, month or two. And I saw this guy a couple of weeks ago. He was getting into his minivan, and he was looking at me really funny, like he didn't like that I was parking behind his van. And I thought, well, maybe I'm, perceiving this or making something out of it. Maybe he's not even looking at me or whatever, right? And then last week I go to get to the car and there's a note on my car, and saying, "Don't park here," with a big exclamation point, and no explanation or anything, and there's no permit signs or anything like that around. And so the only thing I can think is that it must be this crazy guy in the minivan who thinks he owns the road or something. I don't know. And so today I parked somewhere else, but I wasn't really sure what I should do, because I kind of feel like if I don't park there, I'm training this man to think that he owns the road, but I also don't want to park there and then come back and find the car has been vandalized, or I just don't want to deal with the drama.
Well, exactly. So in that sense, you're training yourself not to need to spend time around people who are, let's say, less than rational.
Yeah. I was just like, what? I mean, it doesn't even make sense. And it's not like I'm parking in the only spot in front of his house. There's tons of spots, and I parked there for like 2 hours. It's not like he needs to park on another street or anything. It's just, anyway, so.
Well, no, and thank you for sharing that example, because we all have, like, these are the things that, and I'm reminded of a wonderful book. It was actually published in the 70s. It's just as relevant today. It's called Love is Letting Go of Fear. And in that book, it's by Gerald Jampolsky. And in that book, he says this wonderful thing, which I've lived my life by and had many instances with. He said, would you rather be right or would you rather have peace of mind? And I used to say, can't I have both?
Yeah.
But it perhaps is the more skillful question to say, what does it really mean? Like, why am I engaging in this? I mean, even a year ago, I would have gotten into some kind of yelling fight with that cab driver that I just mentioned.
And he probably would have had it coming.
Well, he probably would have, but I don't know what it would have done for me.
No, exactly, yeah.
I mean, I was absolutely and remain undisturbed. And that peace of mind means more to me than showing the cab driver what he did wrong.
Exactly. So it's interesting, because I kind of, with the example that I just gave you, I'm sort of still unsure. I mean, it's fine for me to park somewhere else, and I guess that's just the better thing. But I kind of also, I see what you're saying about wanting to show the person what they're doing wrong. I mean, I don't want to start a fight with this guy. Mm-hmm. But I also don't want to be, I mean, obviously this man is, if it's the man I think it is, he's middle-aged. He's obviously gone through his whole life feeling entitled to whatever he can boss people around and pressure them into doing. And so I kind of feel like, well, obviously people don't stand up to him, so he continues with this behavior.
But Marie, are you ready for a positive challenge?
What's the positive challenge?
Marie's like, I don't know. It depends on what it is. Well, may I offer another view?
Yes, please.
What you've just described about the man and the middle-aged and entitled and everything you said could be accurate, but it's also a story. You created that story.
That's true.
And, how do you feel with that story? Like, does that story serve you and help you, or does it in any way diminish or deplete you?
I think it probably diminishes, because it makes me feel a little bit angry.
Mm-hmm. And it's not that we can't feel angry. I mean, you can feel angry and go, what a lunatic, like, why is he writing that sign? Oh, well, but then you can be done. So this is another really good point, because some people, and myself included, I have gotten so fixated on things. Like I could see myself writing this guy that you're talking about, writing him a note back, and deliberately parking there, and then coming back each day and thinking, is my car vandalized? It really kind of means that we keep that thing going, whatever that thing is. So we keep those feelings going, and then people are spending too long being angry. Mm-hmm. Do you know?
Definitely. And I mean, I see what you're saying and the story. I mean, I have no idea really what is driving him to be so upset that I'm parking there.
And in fact, you don't even know that it's him.
No, I don't.
Right. So really, the whole thing is made up. All you know is there was a note that said, "Don't park here."
Yeah. But there's no reason for me not to park there, so I just don't understand.
It doesn't matter. But it doesn't matter.
But then what if it was a case where, I mean, for me, it's easy to park somewhere else. But let's say that was one of the only parking spots that I could find.
Well, then you would have a choice, wouldn't you? But you're acting as if that is the only place you have to park.
All right, fair enough. Well, today I parked somewhere else, so, and I had a note ready to say, like, I don't understand, you know, can you tell me why I'm not supposed to park here?
I love how feisty you are.
Well, just in case there wasn't anywhere else to park. Like, I was prepared, right?
I would do the same thing, but I just love how feisty you are.
Well, when I saw him that first time looking at me funny, I almost wanted to get out of the car and say, you know, is there a problem? Like, just nicely. You know, I'm noticing that you are looking at me and watching me, and I'm just wondering what's going on for you. But it just didn't seem important enough that day, so... But, yeah, anyway, it's time for a break, and then we'll talk more about your book instead of my parking nightmares.
No, the book, what you talked about fits in exactly with the book.
All right, well, we'll be back with more Synchronicity in a moment. We are speaking with SARK, Susan Ariel Rainbow Kennedy. She's the author of the brand new book, Glad, No Matter What, Transforming Loss and Change into Gift and Opportunity. And we'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back to Synchronicity, talk radio for your mind, body, and soul. I'm your host, Marie Benard. Thanks so much for being with us today. If you want more information about this show and podcasts and all of that, and some of the other shows that I'm involved with, go to my website, spiritualshow.com. And today we're speaking with SARK, Susan Ariel Rainbow Kennedy. She's the author of Glad No Matter What, Transforming Loss and Change into Gift and Opportunity. And if you want to check out her website, she is at planetsark.com, S-A-R-K, planetsark.com. And welcome back to the show, SARK.
Thanks so much, Marie.
Hi. So, and is that the best place to get your book is through your site, or where do you recommend people get it?
Yeah, they can. There's, they could get it through Amazon or IndieBound or Barnes & Noble, and then, of course, in Canada, I'm not sure what the distribution is like, but absolutely through Planet SARK is another great place. And it's in bookstores everywhere.
All right, awesome. So I just want to put out, are you ready to play the Glad game, or what more would you like to say leading up to, let's explain what the Glad game is.
Yeah, it's the Glad game originally came from a book published in the 50s called Pollyanna, and it was a book by Eleanor Porter. And Pollyanna, and I've been called Pollyanna all my life, by the way, and not in a good way. There's a great misconception about Pollyanna, is that she was some kind of positive ninny who went around and just, I don't know, tried to always feel good or glad, and it's absolutely not true. I mean, she's a fictional character, but this young girl whose parents both died, and she was sent to live in a town with an aunt and uncle she didn't know, and who weren't very nice to her. And she set about doing something she called the Glad game, where in every circumstance she found something to be glad about. So I've kind of taken that and expanded it, and the way I'm thinking of it and the way I like to play it is take something that you find difficult or challenging about your life, and then find something to be glad about that difficulty or challenge. So it's not sidestepping the difficulty. It's, in fact, embracing it and practicing some practical gladness. So I'll give an example. I sometimes feel overwhelmed. One of the challenges in my life is I sometimes feel overwhelmed by all there is to do in my business, all the different products and services that I offer and all the management that those require. And I get overwhelmed. And I feel glad that I have a business and that I'm doing my life's work and that I can offer these wonderful things for other people and, for myself. So that's an example of something I find challenging and then something that I'm glad about that specific challenge. So, Marie, do you have one?
Well, I was thinking about the parking one because I was like, how can I be glad about that? So sometimes, I don't know, I mean, do you ever find that it's a bit of a stretch, or I'm going to say...
Sure, but let's you try it and let's see where you go.
So I'm going to say that I'm glad about the...
Well, I will stop you right there. Start with what you find difficult or challenging.
Okay, so the challenge is the uncomfortable situation with the parking policeman. I don't know what to call him. That's the nicest thing I could think of. And I guess I'm glad. I don't know. I'm glad because it's giving me an opportunity to practice not being right.
Oh, this is good, Marie.
And also, so I've now parked across the street, and some days, if I'm lucky, I might actually be closer to the bus stop.
Mm-hmm. That's fabulous. That's a great example of the glad game.
But I have to be honest, I still feel that little bit of like, I want to get him back.
Yeah, but the glad game is not meant to erase that. The glad game is meant to let you be in the marvelous, messy middle, where you have those gladnesses that you just mentioned, and you also have those annoyances and challenges that you just mentioned.
All right. Well, if you want to play the glad game, give us a call, 604-822-2487. If there is a challenge that you are having in your life, Susan, what if someone's having a challenge and right now they just can't seem to see the glad? Can you help them work through that?
Well, first of all, there are, let's be sure, and I'm so glad you mentioned this, and I meant to mention it in the beginning, there are times that you need to just feel what you feel, and there's not one darn glad thing about it. You know, it's just at that time you just can't find a glad thing, and you shouldn't. You know, like, I think about the death of a child. So a parent that comes to me and says, there's no gift in this death. And I say, well, right now there is not. Because the gifts and gladnesses sometimes take a bit of time to show up in the material world. And also we need to honor how we feel when we feel it. You know, this is not about trying to use a little mini trampoline and bounce out of bad feelings.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, and thank you for helping me clarify that. And, you know, I can't remember everything, so it's a good thing.
We have a caller on the line, so
great.
Should we bring her up? So you are on the air with Susan Ariel Rainbow Kennedy, also known as SARK. And first of all, what's your name?
It's Julia.
Hi, Julia. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Julia.
Hi, thank you. This is awesome. I'm driving to work.
I hope you're on hands-free.
Yes, I do. I have a hands-free.
Okay, good. So what is your challenge, Julia?
So, I was in a relationship for over a year, and we started unraveling it in June. And we're still basically in a breakup phase, and we're trying to do it in a way that is gentle for both of us. But it's very painful because I still really love this man, but it's just not meant to be. So
yes.
There's a bit of a conflict that I'm still moving forward in the process.
So tell us what you feel glad about that relationship.
Oh, yeah. Well, I feel so glad that I got to know someone so special and unique in such a deep way. You know, I so appreciate that. It's like a miracle that I was with someone so unique and special. So, yeah, I guess I'm really glad I had that chance, even though it was only for a year. I'm really glad about it.
Oh, Julia, that's beautiful. You know, I wrote in my new book, Glad No Matter What, about my love relationship that lasted about a year and a half, and we actually called our breakup a breakthrough.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, and it was very mutual and very respectful, and we did see a therapist to help us have some closure. But I wrote about that while I was experiencing it, and it was very painful because in many ways this person was the closest person that I'd ever been with. You know, like I'd never let anyone get as close. Mm-hmm. And so I wrote a lot about that in the book, and so I really honor where you are. And I know what you're talking about when you still love someone, but there's reasons that you can't go on, and that it's so painful.
Oh, so yeah, that's for sure it is. It's intense. It really is. And
it really is. And it will continue, and you'll have many grief episodes. And I just honor you and bless you. And then I honor you for finding the gladness, because look at what you just spoke of. It was so beautiful.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, it's so wonderful to talk to you. I love what you're doing. I love who you are, and it's so exciting I got through on the phone, so thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Julia. Have a wonderful day at work.
Thanks. I'm going to go buy your book today.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, take care.
Thank you. Thanks so much for calling in, Julia. That was wonderful. So if you would like to play the GLAD game with us, we just have a few minutes left in the show, so give us a call, 604-822-2487. That's 604-822-2487. And so, SARK, let's talk more about, while we're waiting for someone else to call in, is there anything else that you'd like to add about the GLAD game? What's your favorite part about your book, GLAD No Matter What?
Well, it's because my favorite part of the book is being a beacon for people to be glad more often. You know, we do need to feel the challenging, dark things, but we need to also feel glad more often. And we don't need to fixate in these places where we're upset and stay there. You know, we can learn and practice to get out of it more expediently. And I'm so excited about that, because I have the full range of human feelings, and I feel things very deeply, but I don't dwell and fixate the way I used to. And I'm so eager for other people to experience that too.
Well, Susan, it's time for a break again, and so I will put you on hold here, and we will be back with more Synchronicity in a moment. We're speaking with SARK. She's the author of the new book, GLAD No Matter What, Transforming Loss and Change into Gift and Opportunity. And there's actually some reviews about it on Amazon.com. Someone told me the other day, and you can see like the table of contents, and it's just a beautiful book with a beautiful cover. I want to ask SARK about the cover in just a minute as well, too. So we'll be back with more Synchronicity and more SARK in just a moment. If you would like to play the GLAD game with us, give us a call right now during the break, 604-822-2487. That's 604-822-2487. Welcome back to Synchronicity, talk radio for your mind, body, and soul here on CITR 101.9 FM in Vancouver. I'm your host, Marie Benard, and thank you so much for allowing me to come into your world and share SARK with you today. And coming up in just a few minutes is Scotty's Scenic Drive here on CITR. But right now, we're speaking with SARK. She is the author of GLAD No Matter What. If you would like to get on the air and play the GLAD game with us, give us a call, 604-822-2487. That's 604-822-2487. Welcome back to the show, SARK.
Oh, thanks so much. And let's be sure people know that I'm also the artist. I'm the author and artist, and all the books are hand-done and filled with my art and photographs. And you asked about the cover. I adore the cover, and it's a very funny story. I called my new publisher, and I said, I have a vision for the cover, and would you like to have a 3-minute book cover meeting? Because I think that most meetings are too long and boring. And so they said they would love that. So we were all on the phone, and I said, here's a vision. I said, I'm wearing a sparkly purple cape. I'm standing in the center of a labyrinth on the edge of the ocean with my arms outstretched up into the air, and glad no matter what written above me. And they said, we love it. And I said, good, how are we going to do it? Because I knew the labyrinth, but I didn't know about the photography. And they started mentioning different photographers' names, and I used my wise self in that case. And I said, no, I'm feeling that the photographer will be somehow crabby and annoyed by the wind. I said, it's very windy out there, so that will not work. And then the editor said, well, I'm really good with the camera. Do you want me to come and we'll go on a hike and go get the shot? And I said, yes. And so that's what we did, and that's the photo you're seeing.
Awesome. And where is this labyrinth?
It's in San Francisco at the edge of the ocean at a place called Land's End. And if you look closely, you can see some giant crows on some rocks behind me. that were cawing the entire time we were there.
Were you glad about that?
Well, I was. Yes, I love crows. It was a little bit disturbing. I mean, they were eating something, and I don't know. It was a little distracting, let's say. But and then you can see me on the back cover. There's a little tiny me over on the right, looking out at the Golden Gate Bridge. So yeah, I've never been on one of my own books covers, and I was really happy about this and love how it turned out. Beautiful.
And inside the book, it's all written. It's handwritten.
Yes, I write the whole thing.
And so that's just part of your creative process? Because I don't know if I haven't seen many books that are actually, they're not typed out.
Oh, yeah, all of my other 15 books are handwritten as well. Yes, it's what I always tell people: delight yourself first, and then others will be truly delighted. So I grew up being very inspired by comic books. I really like the marriage of art and words. And so for me, this is the most inspiring way. I do it lying down, and I do it with different colored markers, and I just love how it looks.
Well, it is very pretty, and you can tell that it's a joyful process. There's lots of swirlies and different colors, and it's beautiful.
Well, let's be sure to say practical gladness, because there's also a lot of annoyance and difficulty woven in. There are times where it's very hard to handwrite a book, and there are times where I'm doing 4 drafts in handwriting, and I get very frustrated and think, why in heaven's name would I do it this way? So let's be sure. Let's be sure to say that it's a combination, because everything is.
So, SARK, I wanted to ask you, because I'm going to put that number out there again one more time, 604-822-2487, 604-822-2487 if you want to play the Glad game. Now, what about with some people have been holding on? You mentioned how we feel angry or we feel upset, and we kind of carry these feelings on for far too long instead of feeling it in the moment and then moving through it and finding something to be glad about. So what about these people that have been holding on to anger for, for example, the cab driver situation? There are some people that would be based the entire reason for being angry for their entire life would be because one day some jerk of a cab driver ticked them off. And so now they have license to be jerks forever. Right.
Or, something more, like in my case, being molested by an older brother, or the therapist saying that I was a seductive little girl, or any of the things. Because people stop and they don't do their transformational work. It's not about, so let's take, people need to feel what they feel and then move on. But in between there is feeling what you feel, and then it's doing the transformational work to put yourself, the practical gladness that I talk about, which is to put yourself in the middle so that you're in a progression of feelings. You're not necessarily leaping from being angry to just being glad and happy. Like, I don't mind that. It's more, and by the way, it's not like a ladder. People are continually thinking that healing happens in steps like a ladder. It's absolutely like a spiral and in layers. So, for example, you might feel really angry now and then think that you're over it, and, 6 months later you could be angry again. And so that's the work, that's the work that everyone has the opportunity to do. But I will tell you, if you turn towards your feelings instead of away from them, even 5 seconds of spending time with a challenging feeling will cause it to soften and change shape and shift it.
So, that's really interesting, because I kind of wish, I'm glad I'm not feeling angry today, but I kind of wish that I had something that I was feeling really upset about right in this moment, so we could kind of work through it.
Well, I think you demonstrated it beautifully, and I think that the caller did as well. She's in a heartbreak, she's in a broken heart. And at the same time, listen to her gladness of loving this other soul.
Definitely. I know. The way she was talking about him, I was kind of like almost, well, do you have his phone number? He sounds like a wonderful guy.
Well, and I'm sure he is a wonderful guy, and she's a wonderful person. It doesn't mean we're meant to spend our lives together.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Well, we just have a few minutes left in the show, Sark, and so I'm just wondering what else you would like to say about GLAAD no matter what.
Well, I would probably say that, I would want to share this, that recently I was at a retreat center and I arrived and I was very happy and I was glad. And then all of a sudden a very unwelcome feeling showed up, and that feeling was loneliness. Because I was there by myself and suddenly everyone else was together and I felt very lonely. And I looked at this stack of brownies that was right there and I thought, well, I could eat these brownies and sedate that loneliness because I know that works. Or I could drink all this wine and I could anesthetize the loneliness, and I know that works. But it really only works in the short term, and there are negative side effects. And so I did something new, and I want to share it with everyone because they might want to do this too.
Oh, yes, please.
Yeah, I invited loneliness to join me, and I found 2 chairs on the lawn, and I asked loneliness to sit in one of the chairs. And I felt a little funny, and I thought, what is this going to do? And I sat down, and then, Marie, I saw an outline of loneliness sit down. There was a faint outline of another being. And I was astounded by this, and I looked over, and I'm like, wow, loneliness is here. And I was so moved, I held my hand out and said, would you like to hold my hand? And I didn't feel a hand so much as I felt energy. And so now I'm holding the hand of my own loneliness sitting on the lawn. And I started to cry because I was so moved at how much I loved my loneliness, instead of trying to avoid it or push it away or say, not now. And we sat there together for about 15 minutes, and I watched as loneliness slowly dissolved and changed shape and then disappeared. But where loneliness went was really inside me in an integrated way. So that I was lonely, I still had remnants of loneliness, but I was all together. I wasn't like, oh no, not loneliness. I had loved and tended to that feeling of loneliness, and that's what allowed it to shift. And it didn't take that long. And then I saw a football under the chair, and I thought, wow, look, there's a football. I haven't kicked a football in a long time, and I started drop kicking the football all over the lawn, and I was laughing and running. And I had such a sweet and beautiful night. And so I really offer that for any of these difficult feelings, if you can turn towards them, even for 5 seconds, if you can imagine holding the hand of if you can imagine sitting with the angry feeling and saying, I hear you, I love you, I see you.
Wow.
It will cause the feelings to be able to be integrated into you instead of separate from you.
Oh, that is so beautiful, Sark.
Well,
you're so smart.
You. I mean, that's why I write. That's why I wrote GLAAD no matter what.
Well, thank you so much
for things. You're so welcome.
And thank you for being that beacon that you have known that you wanted to be known you were meant to be since you were 10 years old.
Oh, thank you, Marie. I'm honored.
Thank you. And it's interesting because so many people have these moments of insight of what their purpose is at a young age, and then through conditioning and through negative thoughts or through parents telling them, no, you can't do it, they don't follow their purpose. So thank you for sticking with that.
Well, thank you, and you just reminded me. I created something for that too, because I'm really having the honor of witnessing people make their creative dreams real, just like I did. And I created an online on-the-phone course, which is called Dream Boogie, Dancing from Dreaming to Doing. And we just finished a session, and we'll be starting another one on February 1st. And so if you go to planetsark.com and you sign up for my free e-letter, first of all, you'll right away get 3 free days of a program I did called SARK's Awesome Anytime Adventure. And you will love it. It has audio, and it has art, and it's just fantastic. And then you'll get all the information for how to consider joining us for Dream Boogie this winter. So thanks for bringing that up, Marie.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much again. It's time. Scotty's Scenic Drive is coming up next, but I'm going to play Mark from the Get Down and from Friday Sunrise is filling in again for Scotty. So I'm going to be playing my interview with Wayne Dyer just as a reminder. He is coming November 23rd to the Queen Elizabeth's Theatre. So I'm going to be ending the show with that 15-minute interview with Dr. Wayne Dyer. And SARK, of course, you just did an event with him a little while back. And so before we close the show, is there anything else that you would like to add?
I would like to add to everyone that you are seen, you are known, and you are loved. And I also want to invite you to call me on my Inspiration phone line. It's a free service I offer, and it's 415-546-3742 in the United States. 415-546-3742, and I've had that line for about 16 years, and about 12,000 people a month call from all over the world.
And that's how Leslie Lewis Sword met you, too.
That is how Leslie met me. She actually called that line for 6 or 7 years and never left her name, just kept on leaving these fabulous messages. And then one day left her name, and that's when we started our friendship.
Wonderful, fabulous. Well, it's time to wrap up the show now, so thank you so much, SARK, and go to her website.
What a wonderful show, Marie.
Thank you.
And just sending you all abundance for the fundraiser, and if you're listening and you can, give some money, do it, and what a great show.
Thank you so much, SARK. Appreciate that. We're going to need that for next week's Fun Drive. Thank you. Okay,
be well. It's called a Fun Drive, F-U-N.
Yeah, Fun Drive. That is what we call it.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, see, you already are doing it.
Yay! Thanks so much, SARK.
Thank you so much, Marie.
Thank you. Take care. Be well.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So again, that was SARK. She's the author of Glad No Matter What, Transforming Loss and Change into Gift and Opportunity. Thanks so much for listening. And I'm